How's it going, guys? Anfield here, and welcome to a new positioning video. Now, before we get started on this video, I just want to point out a little comment here by this IS-6, who turns out to be pretty toxic. But I want to point out that initial little comment there, as he instructs us all to check our minimaps and other such things. It's sound advice, of course, but you should certainly listen to it if you're giving it out. Nonetheless, we'll come back to that. Now, this positioning video is going to be a replay. Now, in the past, I've sort of used sort of engineered training room situations so that I can display what I'm talking about and things like that. Now, of course, that generally relies on me having someone to help me and other things like that. So I just happened to have this replay, which I played on stream a couple days ago, I think, and it sort of shows more what I'm talking about without me having to sort of recreate it in a training room. Now, the ideal situation was me having 29 other people willing to set up in a certain way, and then I could just change certain things about the battle so that I could display how different choices affect you. Of course, I don't have 29 people to help me, so this is the best that I have. So fortunately, this replay is pretty good for two specific things, and that's macro and micro positioning on flanks and understanding how the general flow of the battle is going, so that you make the right decision about the flank that you're on and whether you leave it, push it, retreat, whatever it happens to be. So you can see here we are on Fisherman's Bay. There's one artillery, and it's a tier 8 game in my super Pershing. I've gone to the middle here. It's a nice little area where I can sort of get lots of shots, and I can help whichever flank needs it the most. Now, I'll point out to you that we have quite a lot of heavies in the city, and that's pretty much where they stay. They sit and they don't move for most of this battle, which is sort of where the problems in this battle become, and where the IS-6's comments become slightly amusing to me, because you know, he gives this advice and then sort of ignores it himself. Anyway, you can see that the enemy team so far only have 3 tanks lit on the city, and that's because they only have 3 tanks there, while we have a much stronger force. In fact, the enemy team is actually pushed up quite far. You can see where the AT-15 is. Now, I'm sort of beginning to ebb my way over that direction, because I'm thinking they need to win this city flank so we can win this game. You can see that our field, our 1-2 line's being pushed in a little bit there. There isn't a great deal of firepower there. There's quite a few tanks, but not a great deal of firepower other than the 2 Borsigs. They're the only tanks with big, powerful guns on that flank, but nothing else really of note. So I'm a little worried about that flank falling too quickly. Now, I could try and make it all the way over there, but it's a lot more dangerous for me to make it over there and be safe. So I decided I'm going to push the city and hope these guys win. Now, there are now 4 tanks in the city. There's still not a lot of firepower compared to our tanks, which we have much more. We have a T-29 that's finally flanking. Our IS-6 is still very defensive, however, and I don't really know that he has any kind of shots. But anyway, I'm going to try and help these guys push this flank, because it's important that you control flanks. If you lose a flank, you lose, you know, a lot of map control, and it can be quite bad for the flow of the game. You can see that our 1-2 line has been obliterated. These Borsigs have just been sort of overcome by a pushing force. Once tanks are in their face, they don't often perform that well when they're no longer in that sniping role. So unfortunately, that's completely a 1-2 line, completely overmatched. Now, this city should have been won a long time ago. Once you win the city, you can move up into the middle, which is, you know, good. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. Now, the AT-15 is dead, and that leaves just a Tiger and this KV-4. So KV-4 is finally going down, and everything's happening. Our IS-6 has moved a couple feet, so good for him. I'm beginning to turn around now, assuming that the KV-4 will be dealt with and that they're going to cap. However, it looks like the enemy team decide that capping is not something that they're going to be too interested in. So basically, so far in this battle, we've lost the 1-2 line. I moved over from the middle when there were no longer any shots to push into the city to make sure that we won this flank and we had some sort of map control, because the last thing you want is to be collapsed in on all sides. Too many flanks to deal with at once is not a good thing. So in this particular case, obviously, you know, we're fortunate that they're not capping and they're pushing into us. Now, if an enemy team does this and they're not careful, you can actually defend successfully, but it is still difficult. Unfortunately for me, that was a critical hit and no damage. But anyway, this battle is kind of in a bad state right now. Obviously, it's 4-10. Now it's 5-10. We did get a kill there, but it's still not looking very good. Now, they do have a couple light tanks, so you can discount a few of those, and I just killed one of them. So it's not too unreasonable, but we do need our team to be very defensive and, you know, sort of survive long enough for us to actually come back into this game. So there's a Centurion there that I'm firing on. Unfortunately, he pens my side as if it's, like, angled almost flat to him, when it was extremely angled. Kind of a confusing penetration, to be honest with you. Thought the Super Pershing had okay-ish side armor, but nonetheless, we've kind of clawed our way back. It's 8-11, so it's not too bad. But at this point, I'm looking around. I'm trying to think where I can go. I want to get rid of as many tanks as possible, as quickly as possible, but it's difficult to always know which way to go. But the Centurion provides me an easy option and comes around here, so that's fine. I like to go this way because it means I won't be shot from the middle or in the side or anyway. Unfortunately, he has a Tiger to back him up, and our Tiger 1 believes that going broadside is the best way to go out. And unfortunately, of course, that does not work for him. So at this point, I'm using the Tiger 1 as a shield while I try to deal with the Centurion. The Tiger in the back there is not in a good position, and I'm trying to use whatever armor I have to be successful. So Centurion now down, that leaves the Tiger 1. Now you can see it's just me and this IS-6 now, and they have a lot of enemy tanks. So at this point, I don't have a lot of hope for this battle, but of course you got to try and get as much out of the battle as possible. That is a nice bit of texture error, but whatever. Anyway, so yeah, at this point it doesn't look good. Now, this is where the microing comes in. I've been talking a lot about macro so far this battle. Now, you'll notice that I've noticed that this challenger... You'll see that I've seen that this challenger is going to come around. So, this is the little bit of micro play that I do here. I swing my tank around so that the challenger is no longer shooting in my back. And so, this is why situational awareness is so important. Because if you don't notice that sort of thing, you can't make those kind of maneuvers. If I'd have continued to back up, the Tiger 1 would have continued to shoot me. Maybe bounce, but I would have had this tank destroyer with high DPM shooting me in the back. Instead, what I did was I limited the amount of guns that could fire upon me. And that's the most important thing about this, is eliminating the amount of guns that can fire on you. Now, unfortunately, getting penned there a couple times didn't help, but there's not a great deal you can do. Sometimes you just get penned. But this little maneuver did at least help me survive. Now, if I hadn't done this and I hadn't paid attention, yeah, it would have been bad. So, in this sort of situation and other situations like it, what you want to do is when you have the opportunity, you want to push into an enemy so that you can avoid more guns. It may seem like crazy to like randomly turn around there, but if you can eliminate the amount of guns that can shoot you, you're going to have a much better time. Now you can see that this IS-6 is absolutely furious at his team because it's all their fault and he did everything in this game. Unfortunately for him, not really. But yeah, he's going to blame everyone else but himself. Now, going back to the macro side of this, this is a position where he needs to notice that there's a problem on the 1-2 line, and the fact that they have so many tanks in the city versus tanks that they have lit in the city, not many, they should push. They need to push. You need to recognize that as an IS-6, you need to push, but instead he wants to blame everyone else. So no clutch at the end of this battle, unfortunately, but it could have been a whole lot worse. However, while I'm not defending the Borsigs, which both of them did 0 damage, and there's no real excuse for that, considering even if tanks are collapsing around you, you should at least get 1 shot off, if not 2, before you go down. This IS-6 did farm some damage at the end of this battle, but it's not really about that. The battle was already lost by the time he got most of his damage. If he'd have pushed and made an actual attempt to win the flank that he was on, we would have actually had a pretty solid chance at winning that game. And that's why it's so important to do as the IS-6 says and look at your minimap and pay attention to the flank. Because if you begin to see that you're losing another flank, it's generally because they have more firepower on that flank and you have more firepower on your flank. Doesn't always mean that way. Sometimes you lose flanks where you have more guns because people play poorly. But in this particular case, you have to win the flank that you're on if you have an outnumbering situation. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching the video. Hope that it was helpful. I know that it wasn't quite the setup as usual in these videos where I usually use a training room, and there will be probably more of those types of videos coming as well. But I wanted to make this video because it was kind of a decent enough replay where I could kind of show what I was talking about without having to need a training room to do so. So I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you're having a great day. I'll catch you guys later.